Okay, welcome back to round 3. We have Eric Dupuis versus Warren Connell. Eric, you're running a very similar list to what you played last time. You want to briefly take us through it?
Yeah, for those of us who weren't here last time, it's a Grixis control list running a mix of counters, very little amount of discard, and then Snapcaster Mages in terms of utility. The win conditions are assembling Voltaic Key and Time Vault or Tinker for Blightsteel. Occasionally you win by Jace, and then every once in a while you actually win by Wizard Beats. It runs 3 Snapcasters and 4 Dark Confidants, so sometimes you just get there 2 damage at a time.
Okay, and it looks like Warren's playing a Gush Bond list, which revolves around playing 4 Gush, Fast Bond. He has Tinker for Blightsteel Colossus. He also plays Voltaic Key and Time Vault. So a lot of ways to just explosively win the game.
It's definitely spicy. I really like these type of lists. I just haven't been running anything like them lately because I feel like they just have such a hard time versus the workshop decks. Gush, picking up 2 lands is not like it used to be, but in the early days of Vintage, you could Gush and respond to a Wasteland activation, and that was kind of beneficial. Now just losing those 2 lands is such a detriment, it's really just not worth it, in my opinion, right now versus shops. But it makes for a really tough matchup against other blue decks, so looking forward to this one.
Also, a mental misstep on a Fast Bond seems pretty devastating for the Gush player.
Absolutely. That's why when I built my deck, I wanted to make sure no matter what cuts I had to make to try and beat Dredge and Shops that I kept that core of 3 Snapcasters and 3 mental missteps. I think 4 and 4 is overkill. I think 3 and 3 is really the sweet spot where you're going to be able to misstep those key spells frequently enough to make it worth the inclusion. Now the only change I made for my list from last time was swapping out one of the pieces of Graveyard Hate for a second Grafdigger's Cage. It's still a Graveyard Hate piece, but it also gives me a little bit extra edge versus Oath.
Yeah.
Oath is a legitimate issue, and it can potentially stop Tinker Blightsteel, but I'm not usually worried about that. I mean, Jace handles that.
Yeah, bounce it.
There's a lot of ways to get rid of that Blightsteel. I know to someone who doesn't play Vintage, Blightsteel looks like an unstoppable monster because he's indestructible and he kills you in one hit.
Hurkyl's Recall, putting them back in their opponent's hand. He's not very castable at 12 mana.
It's pretty tough.
Or is it 11 mana?
It's 12.
It's 12,
It's 12.
right.
I flip him with Confidant every once in a while. You remember when you get hit for 12. Yeah, it's definitely a really powerful effect. It's worth running in a deck with Dark Confidant, but you do have to make decisions based off of that sometimes. Occasionally, I'll keep him in my hand when I could shuffle him away when I have a Confidant out, just to make sure that I don't get hit for 12.
Him. Right.
So yeah, he definitely has you modify your play style a little bit. You don't want to be losing games that you'd otherwise win, just because you got a little greedy. And that's what I tried to do in this matchup, is I tried to really make sure that I didn't give myself any chances to lose. And we'll see some of the decisions I made. I look forward to seeing them again and seeing if it was actually optimal or if I was a little overly cautious. We have to flip a coin here to see who goes first. And I lose the flip.
Okay.
In blue matchups, it's pretty much, you get the extra card. The tempo loss can be significant, but I mean, it's really nothing like playing against shops. You really want to go first versus shops. It's really helpful to go first versus Dredge. I guess versus Dredge, it's more helpful that they go second more than anything. I mean, you just want them to have as few turns as possible.
Right.
We're opening up with a Scalding Tarn and a Mox Emerald.
Emeralds, fetching down to 19. Beta Mox Emerald, or possibly Alpha, I can't tell from here.
Looks like it's signed too.
Very nice. Oh, and the foil Scalding Tarn. Just bringing the bling from step 1.
So here we have an Underground Sea, so we've got 3 colors on board
4 and
right
black
away.
bordered.
The only color Warren doesn't have access to right now is red. He could have gotten a Volcanic if he wanted, so it looks like his mana base is really, really strong here. Now in his deck it's really 4 colors. You really need your blue for all of your card drawing. You want your black for your Tutors, your Yawgmoth Will.
Oh, a
And
time vault.
Time Vault, that's threatening the win
Starting things off.
right away. Now, from the other side of the table, it looks to me like...
Ooh, a library. So that's going to generate card advantage, especially being on the draw. You're going to definitely get at least one activation out of it at a minimum. Over the course of the game, if you get to draw an extra card every turn, that's going to be something that Warren might not be able to deal with. Looks like he played a Misty Rainforest. Thinking about what his next move is. He has the mana to potentially go Demonic Tutor for Voltaic Key.
That would be brutal, and that would possibly lead to not a lot of library activations.
Going down to 18. He needs to do something in order to keep you off 7 cards.
Well, I've got 7 right now, so I'll be able to tap and go to 8, even if he plays a Voltaic Key. Throw
You
a
could
Force
mental
at that.
misstep,
Misstep would be ideal. Force of Will would bring me down to 6 cards.
untap,
Lots
draw.
of options. So here we go. What is Warren's play? We've got Tinker's a problem, Demonic Tutor's a problem. When my opponent opens up with the first turn Time Vault, I'm thinking more often than not that they kept off of the strength of assembling Vault Key quickly, because it's really not a great first turn play. You know, Dark Confidant on the
Right.
first turn's amazing. All right, we got floating
Floating
some
2
mana
mana
and
and
gushing.
gonna gush.
Now he has black, red, blue, green. He's got all the colors he needs as long as he's making the right choices. The color of mana shouldn't be an issue for him.
It's a foil Japanese gush.
It's a pretty unusual gush to see there.
Very
I'd be
aggressive.
expecting to see fast bond. Oh, no, we have instead the Voltaic Key. Oh, no, the Demonic Tutor.
Demonic Tutor.
Demonic Tutor. So, presumably demonic for Voltaic here.
Right, in response, drawing a card. See how you want to deal with that. Gonna let it resolve and just counter whatever he finds, or do we stop it in case he's searching for counter backup? Looks like it resolves. Probably have a reasonable number of counter spells in your hand.
Even if he's searching for counter backup, I'd still in the same boat if I counter it or not. Like I'm down a counter, he's getting a counter. So I'd very rarely would I counter a DT if I just think he's getting counter backup.
Because then he can just play the spell uncontested.
Yes. Now it's probably Voltaic Key here. So I've got Mental Misstep, I've got Force of Will. There are a lot of options to counter. Let's see what's left in the deck, left in my hand here. I haven't had to do anything yet except draw a card off of library, so should still have
Warren's tapping for a
some
green
goods.
and a Voltaic Key. Which is
And
going to
we've
be
got the
forces, so you
force.
don't have the misstep, but you can still force it and untap and draw, and then activate library again.
Little decision over which blue card here. I believe I had a Snapcaster Mage in hand,
Yep,
and that is
snap.
what I ended up getting rid of.
So 19 to 18.
Yeah, in these matchups, life totals are rarely that important in the blue on blue mirrors. Occasionally you'll kill yourself to your own Dark Confidant, but for the most part it's whoever actually controls the game wins. There are plenty of games where I've won having 2 Dark Confidants out with a Jace on board being at 1 life. I mean, there's just no losing from there, and it almost doesn't matter what your opponent's life total is at that point.
So you ran out the Underground Sea.
And pass back.
You're back to 7.
Yeah, 7 cards in hand now. At this point, I recall having Mana Drain in hand. It's just a matter of what
Activate
direction
so you
do I
can
go
play
in.
a Sol Ring or a Mox.
Play my Emerald.
Mox Emerald.
Now I also have Merchant Scroll and I also have Flusterstorm at this point, which is going to inform my decisions here. I'm sitting back on the Mana Drain.
Looks like you're going to wait for some free mana to make your next play.
I think I also
you are
have
drawing,
tutors.
You are drawing an extra card every turn, so you can really just sit back and kind of play the long game here.
Absolutely, and I think at this point I've got some tutors, when I'm just going to have to figure out the best line to take with those tutors. At this point, the Time Vault isn't really that big a problem. Tinker doesn't get Voltaic Key anymore, unless he runs 2 copies. I didn't think he did. In looking over his list, he does not have 2.
Looks like you
so
get to Thoughtseize here.
Yogwill becomes one of the only relevant cards.
He doesn't have the mana to Yogwill right now, so he could have it in his hand.
Yeah, he'd need the
Paying
he'd
2
need to
mana for a Thoughtseize? Is that a Thoughtseize?
I have no idea why the emerald's tapped here. Okay, I'm just making it clear. I had a green floating, and when Warren asked there, we backed it up. I'm going to be using green after the Thoughtseize resolves.
Okay. Mental misstep. So Warren's down to 16.
That would mean it's a good thing I didn't have the misstep for the Voltaic key, because he would have been able to misstep my misstep.
Right.
So
Blowout.
Force was actually the card I needed there.
Mm-hmm. And this will bring you to 16 as well. Force, fetch, Thoughtseize. Oh no, Thoughtseize got countered, so you're still at 18. Now 17 because of the fetch land. And you run out of Dark Confidant.
Confidant here with Flusterstorm backup. One of the only cards that's going to matter from his side of the table is Yawgmoth's Will. Jace could also be a consideration. But I'm pretty comfortable putting out Dark Confidant here. If he puts out a Jace, then I'm still going to be outdrawing him 2-1.
Right.
2-1 extra draws, 3-2 overall. And Dark Confidant will get rid of Jace in just 2 turns. And if he wants to bounce my Confidant each turn, I'm pretty much
That's
okay
just
with
time
that too.
he's wasting not drawing extra cards.
So Yawgmoth's Will is one of the only real concerns.
Is he gonna play his land first? No, just Yawgwill. Tinker.
Well, there you go, Yawgwill.
Yawgwill hasn't played a land yet this turn.
Yeah, so I've got the
And
Fluster for it.
Flusterstorm. It's not like he was gonna pay for the Flusterstorm anyway because he needed the mana to cast the Voltaic key.
Absolutely.
So I can see why he wouldn't just. It seems like a mistake, like not running the land out there, but he didn't have 2 mana, and even if it was only an extra 1, he's not going to get any value off of his graveyard without any mana in this particular situation.
Yeah, the hope there is to get the extra value of getting the land out of the graveyard.
I missed what you revealed off of Bob.
It was a Dark Confidant, so
Okay.
I've got 2 of them available.
So now you're down to 15.
Warren on the other side of the table here is really in a bad spot. He lost his Voltaic key. He
Yeah.
lost his Yawgmoth's Will. At this point, I'm not seeing regrowths in the list.
Mental misstep. He does have the foil unhinged island, which is nice. But unfortunately, Style's not going to win the game.
Yeah, he really needs, at this point, I guess, Tinker.
Tinker would be huge, but you still have the drain in hand, which you mentioned. We don't know that from camera, but we're fortunate enough to have you here as the player.
Yeah, Tinker is definitely a potential problem.
So you have your own Voltaic key. What's that spell from New Phyrexia? It costs 3 and 2 Phyrexia red, and you can steal a permanent.
Oh, active aggression.
Yeah, active aggression. Not worried about active aggression here.
No, that would be amazing.
Yeah. 3. He would actually have enough mana to use that and activate the Voltaic key. So maybe that's a sideboard card. Active aggression. Probably not. Seems a little too narrow, but he has outs.
At this point, Warren really needs to get either a Blightsteel or a Jace on board. This is not a good spot.
Right.
If he had regrowth, it'd be a completely different situation. So I've got Merchant Scroll here.
Probably finding Ancestral Recall, or maybe more counter backup.
I think at this point, I probably try and put the game away. I'm in pretty good shape.
Yeah.
I probably don't need any more counters than I already have.
So you just go for a Demonic Tutor. Oh no, you have to get an instant. So Mystical for Demonic for Time Vault.
That is one line.
You grab a Tinker. Nope, and again, that's a sorcery.
I can grab Mystical, which can grab either Demonic or Tinker. Tinker would just get Vault Key, and then I'd still have the Dark Confidant. I'm going to take a different line of play here, and my opponent actually didn't appreciate it at first because he thought I was slow rolling him a little bit. But what I actually attempt to do here is make it so I can't possibly lose, the obvious play is like you said, mystical for Tinker. Tinker, get Vault Key, have infinite turns, beat him
But
with
you can
Dark
still
Confidant.
die with the Dark Confidant.
It does happen.
Yeah.
Now I just shuffled back in Blightsteel, which means I definitely do not want to be flipping that.
Nope.
And we're going to make sure that that doesn't happen.
With the Mystical Tutor.
Yes. So I can Mystical, take 2 damage off of finding Demonic Tutor, and then we'll go from there. I don't want to get too far ahead here. We still have plays on Warren's side of the table. So he has 5 mana up. That means we could be
Represents
looking...
Force of Will.
Yep, and he's got
Which
it in
he
hand.
has.
We can see from the camera. He drew Mana Crypt, and he
Plays a Tropical
declines
Island.
to play the Mana Crypt.
Right,
So,
that's just more damage at this point.
end of turn, making sure I still get the card draw off of Library.
We're going to see the Mystical Tutor now or next turn.
I believe I'm Mystical now. The major consideration is,
Are you going to need mana untapped?
well, the Blightsteel's in the deck, and that's
Right.
that's a big deal.
Well, you could do it in response to Dark Confidant trigger and have untapped mana to potentially deal with Counter War, but it seems like he's probably not worried about the tutor, and he's going to take that similar line that you took in a previous game where you're not worried about the tutor, you're worried about what they actually find.
Yeah, and he does not want to tap out on his end step.
Nope.
Definitely want to have as many counter options available as
Taking
possible.
2 damage down to 13, I believe.
So we've got a Volcanic Island.
Mm-hmm.
And gonna go ahead and Demonic Tutor here.
At this point, define Tinker.
Well, if I find Tinker, it's a question of what direction do I go in? Do I Tinker for Time Vault, or I could get Blightsteel, or I could get Black Lotus. Now I have Yawgmoth's Will in hand,
Oh, okay.
so this becomes a
Black
little
Lotus
interesting.
is definitely...
I pretend to think for a little bit and grab Tinker here and reveal it.
You reveal it, which you don't have to, but...
So I have the Yawgmoth's Will in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like if I Demonic Tutor for the Tinker and show the Tinker, then that becomes the card to counter.
Yeah.
Now, we'll see how this plays out. I mean, you're gonna counter the Tinker anyways, if you can, because it can get the Time Vault, and I'm gonna get infinite turns.
Right.
So he throws a Force
And,
at
yep,
it,
he forces it.
and that gives me the drain
Then
to
you
completely put the game away. So I drain the Force here, and then I'm going to be able to let Tinker Resolve grab Black Lotus, go to my second main, get 5 off of the mana drain, then I've got Black Lotus, so I can cast Yawgmoth's Will, have 2 black and 3 colorless floating, replay Lotus, replay Mox Emerald, and then have all the goods from the graveyard at that point. I'm able to Tinker again to assemble Vault Key, and then I'm able to Demonic Tutor for the answer to
The Lightning Bolt.
Yes. I actually grab a Jace because
It's better.
it's better.
Yeah.
I can bounce the Dark Confidant and then just Fate Seal him out.
Right.
So here, at this point, he definitely doesn't have any counters. I'm totally comfortable moving all in here.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Move
no
to
way
the
that...
second main, 5 mana plus 3 black. You get in for 2. I believe you attacked twice, so he was at 17, so that probably brings him to around 13 life.
Yeah. Realistically, in these matchups, the life totals pretty much don't matter. It really is just about winning the game, and it's not done by Wizard Beats very often. So here, the game's pretty much over. I mean...
Yeah, I think you're explaining to him, okay, so I had 8, I go down to 2 black and...
Yeah, I
and
just...
3 colorless.
Oh, extra land, I think, there. I think that's a mistake. Let's see if
Was
I
that an
catch
extra
that.
land this turn?
I think I played a Volcanic at the start of the turn.
Oh.
Definitely not going to matter, but I still have 2 black floating and 3 colorless.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of a discussion there that might have had me sidetracked, because there's no reason for me to have tapped that emerald either. But regardless, I mean, the game is absolutely over. Just a matter of the
Right.
concession at this point. Realistically, there's no good reason for Warren to let the game continue. All I can really gain is information on his deck. I don't have to show him anything out of my list at this point.
Right.
I can just Fate Seal and gain a little bit more info. But I played against his list, so. Though I was surprised that he wasn't running any Empty the Warrens. I don't see any in his list.
I mean, it is his namesake, and it would fit very well in the deck.
Yeah, it's pretty good with Gush. I mean, versus the Workshop matchup, and that's the game there. If you can get out, say, 6 tokens versus Workshops early, certainly 8. I mean, that's usually enough. Even if they get a blocker, you're still hitting for 7, 6, 5, 4. That's game. It's definitely
and
a viable
they also
plan.
slow down their own plan a bit when they play cards like Trinosphere and Sphere of Resistance. You know, they don't really have to endure the taxes on Thorn of Amethyst or Lodestone Golem, but they are paying more for their own spells through Sphere and Trinosphere.
Yeah, they want to slow the game down, and 8 goblins on the first turn or second turn is pretty fast. So.
Right.
But again, they have to not have a sphere effect by the time you're ready to start casting Gush, and that can be a lot to ask for. But as far as the matchup on hand, it looks like I don't have a lot of options versus him. Surgical Extraction is an option. Pithing Needle is an option. I don't usually bring it in versus decks that don't have a lot of planeswalkers or really beefy targets or cards to name.
Pithing Needle seems a bit symmetrical in this matchup. A lot of the things you would name are also in your deck.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very fair point. I could always tinker it away. It's another artifact, but there's just not a lot of upside. I probably have to get rid of the 2 lightning bolts out of my deck, and I almost certainly want to get rid of the Hurkyl's Recall as well.
Creatures. Yeah. I mean, you could even bring in a Yixla Jailer as a body, as a sort of a last... I mean, I guess Ingot Chewer would be much better as a body in that regard.
Yeah, I don't stretch that far for the matchup. I'm not panicked about getting the bolts out. It still can kill a Jace. But I just want better value. I mean, Surgical Extraction versus a Gush deck, because they have to play the Gush in order to get the ball rolling, you can pretty much neuter their whole draw engine. It's not like killing a Dark Confidant. I mean, it just eliminates the whole engine and makes cards like Fastbond really weak. So Surgical Extraction's an option, Nile Spellbomb's an option, Tormod's Crypt, and probably some Graveyard Hate is all I'd be looking at. I don't think I'd want to go with Grafdigger's Cage too often in this match because I want to make sure my Snapcasters are at their best.
Right, and it doesn't really slow his game plan at all.
Yeah, it just stops him from winning with Yawgmoth's Will or tinkering from Blightsteel.
Yeah. But again, that's symmetrical.
Yeah, my game plan of Tinker for Blightsteel is way down on the list for me. I'm generally not trying to win with infect damage. I'm just not a fan. I think it's really easy to stop. It's mostly in there for when I'm playing against shops and any of the like rogue decks. Like if I'm playing against goblins, I'll tinker on the first turn for Blightsteel if I can.
Right.
They have answers.
But they're not necessarily going to have 20 damage on the board on turn 1. I'm sure potentially there's some perfect hand that could kill you on turn 2. But
it's not so much them killing me, it's they have Sting Scourger. So if they can get through with a Sting Scourger,
it's kind of a blowout.
Then yeah, that's the real problem there. But you just go for it. If they have it, they have it.
Right.
I mean, if you could assemble Vault Key instead, that's totally valid.
A little safer, yeah.
But you don't want to be passing the turn either. I mean, turn 1 Time Vault, passing the turn, they still have Tin Street Hooligans.
Right,
so.
There's all kinds of things that could just mess up the game plan. So
right,
Warren's going to be on the play this game, resolving mulligans. Looks like both players keep.
Tropical
Start things
Islands.
off. Tropical, what was
Black
that?
Lotus.
A Black Lotus.
So no play on the first turn, despite having 4 mana.
Yeah. Seems like he kept a very reactive hand, or he doesn't want to get rid of the Lotus right away.
I've got the Tormod Script, which is good versus an explosive start, potentially. But here, not looking like it's going to be particularly impressive. considering he hasn't done anything with 4 mana.
Quite a bit of mana on both players' sides of the table for turn 1.
So most likely he has Gush in hand here. Well, let's force the issue here. Tinker.
Start things off with the Tinker. Going to be sacking the Tormod's Crypt.
And Lotus gets a mana drain.
Yep, and it gets
That's fair
drained.
enough.
So he still gets the 3 mana off Lotus next turn.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Just not the color that he'd like.
Right.
But I'm really not that worse for wear. I'm not going to complain about that trade. Sometimes you just have to just play straightforward depending on the strength of your hand. And just a hard cast Gush.
5 mana Gush.
Yeah, tapping
Still
out.
draws 2 cards.
I'll take it. This is where Surgical Extraction could be really interesting. You see that he drew another one. I could force him to potentially draw 2 cards at a really bad time. You know, making him discard. Oh,
So you're going to vamp for the Surgical, perhaps?
I
Maybe.
think there's more powerful plays here.
Yeah.
It would be a nice thing to happen if I happen to have it.
Can
But
vamp for maybe
Vamp can
even
get
a
something
a
really sick
Lotus
here.
or
I mean, usual targets in this type of situation.
Ancestral.
Could be good.
Yeah, that would be a blowout.
I mean, I don't have the Lotus yet for Yawgmoth's Will, but if I had Lotus or Yawgmoth's Will in
You
hand,
can get the other piece.
get the other piece is definitely a possibility.
Yeah, just an Ancestral seems fine.
So we're just
Get
running out
some-
Ancestral.
Get some card advantage going on.
Yeah. Just trying to outbroken him here, just throwing
Yep.
stuff.
He's gushing in response, hoping to find a mental misstep. Or he got a Force of Will, so is he going to go down 2 cards? I'd say he probably will. If he's going to gush in response to an Ancestral. No.
Oh, no blue card.
Yeah, so it seems like his gush was a little bit of a gut reaction, and maybe not necessarily the...
Oh, I think he drew the Force off the Gush.
he did
right?
draw the 4... Oh, maybe he just doesn't have another blue card.
I think that's what's going on here.
Yeah, that's what it is. He doesn't have the 4. We got to give him a little more credit than that.
Yeah, we got a Blight Steel in hand and a Time Vault. That is not a good hand for this matchup.
Nope. Plenty of lands.
It's actually a really nice altar. I don't know if we can quite see it on camera. It's a Transformers altar.
Oh,
I
nice.
think it's Megatron, if I recall.
Wow. Taking the Force anyway. Seems like the rest of the cards in his hand are a little dead right now. What is that? A Lightning Bolt?
Blight Steel, a Time Vault, and a bunch of lands.
A bunch of lands.
So you got a Time Vault here as a play. Gives them a bunch of live draws. You know, Voltaic Key, Tinker.
Right.
All of those become really relevant.
But you still have a nicely stocked hand. Plenty of board presence. He goes for the Time Vault.
And he's got no real play from there.
Yeah.
Got to pass the turn.
Untapping with 4 mana. No upkeep effects. Maybe you have a Mystical Tutor in your hand or something.
Could have been the consideration there.
Just passing. Seems like you probably have plenty of responses, plenty of things to do on his turn. Mystical Tutor would be a fine end of turn play. Yep, there's the Tutor.
That'd pretty much end the game. If whatever I'm Mystical for here should be ending the game.
Right.
Mystical and Vamp are interesting cards in that they are
Card disadvantage,
and easily countered.
but you have to make up for the disadvantage with the power of whatever you tutor for.
Absolutely. It's not the type of card where you want to... Even Mystical for Ancestral, when you do that, you're really hoping to replay the Ancestral again soon. Like, playing it once, that's a little too fair. Let's get a Snapcaster Mage and replay the Ancestral, or get a Yawgmoth's Will and replay the Ancestral.
Yeah.
Because it's
So your
a big
DT
deal to go down a card.
DT for Lotus here. And then Lotus into Yawg Will, and then you can play Lotus again. You can Vamp Tutor before you Ancestral. You can do all kinds of things right now.
A lot of plays. Hopefully the goal here is just to find the line that actually ends the game in as efficient a way as possible. Now, my opponent still has the Time Vault on the other side of the table. So it's important.
He has
to
live
note-
draws, and you want to make sure you just sort of seal the deal.
Yes, passing the turn may not be worth doing. If you can find a way to not pass the turn, or make sure that there's no way that they can win on their turn,
Right.
which can be tough. I mean, he's got 2 mystery cards.
Yeah.
We know it's not a
Do
counter
you
spell.
maybe you got a Time Walk. No, just the Lotus. Yeah. making triple black. Do you use all the black? It doesn't matter. Yeah, use all the black.
So
Recast land for turn.
Get the Tormods.
Why not?
So here I've got the Tinker still in the graveyard. I have Demonic, Ancestral, lots of different options. Question here is, do you assemble Vault Key? Do you try and just tinker for Blightsteel? Now I don't have enough to tinker for Blightsteel and Demonic for Time Walk.
No, but you could assemble Vault Key here, and I think that would just win. Because, right, you make 3 mana with Lotus, and then you have 3 additional mana, so that would go like Vampiric.
There's no additional mana there because there's no mana drain involved here, right?
I'm sorry, I said additional mana. I meant mana that you can make from your lands.
Oh, okay, sure.
So you have access to 6 mana here. So you could go Vampiric, Ancestral, so that's 2 mana, and that would give you Time Vault and 2 other cards. And then so you have 4 mana available. You could Demonic Tutor for 2 mana, find your Voltaic Key, cast it for 1 mana, and use the final mana to activate it.
Oh, I think we were short on mana there because you got to cast the Time Vault if you do it that way.
Oh, right.
So I'm tinkering for Blightsteel here. I've decided to not do the Vault Key plan.
Ancestral
and going to Thoughtseize.
Oh yeah, definitely. Looks like you take the Jace here.
Yeah, so Jace would have, been a problem.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Now he still has a live draw, so the question is how to make sure that his next draw isn't relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're going to see here is Tutor for Force of Will and Ancestral into it. So now there's no cards that can possibly work. So Mystical for Force, then play Ancestral. Taking a shortcut here, clarifying what's going on so I don't have to shuffle twice.
Yeah, so no matter what he draws, you can just force it if it's relevant.
And that's the safest way.
Untap and win.
The other way, another line would have been Tinker for Time Vault, and then Demonic Tutor for Voltaic Key and play it. But at that point, I wouldn't have a counter. I'd be tapped out. I'd kill him the next turn. And there's the Tinker. So that is why you do that.
Yep.
As literally would have lost the game.
Instead, you just win.
Yes. Much better to go that route.
Right. And
so it may have looked a little overly cautious, a little overly complicated.
But it ended up being the right play because he found the piece he needed to just untap and win.
Yes, if they have 45 cards left in their deck and only one of them can kill you,
you got to play like they're going to draw that card.
Absolutely. There was no reason to give him a chance to win that game from there.
Right. All right, well, that was round 3, and we'll be back for the finals.